201, Friday, January 23rd. I called the Land Use Working Group Subcommittee on Public Safety to order. Present are Judith Long, Sam Weber, and Mark Martinez. So we are in full attendance. And we have from Concord Police, we have Captain Brian Goldman, and from Concord Fire, we have Brian Whitney attending. First on the agenda is public comments for things that are not on the agenda. I don't see any hand raised. Second is approve of the minutes of January, was it January 8th? I have it down as January 9th. The agenda writes it wrong, I think. It was January 9th. Thursday, double check
Yeah.
that.
The Thursday was the 8th.
Okay, and we had it on a
I think it was,
Friday. Yeah,
well, was Friday the land use working group?
let me double check because that might be the wrong date on the draft agenda.
And
Yeah.
who did, I don't see, Shannon did not circulate minutes. Did you or Judith?
I think she circulated it.
Oh, I might have missed that then.
Okay, then let's do that. It's anyway not a major thing, so we can then recirculate for the next meeting and then we approve too. And obviously the draft has a wrong date, so I will correct that and then we have corrected minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, moving to the next agenda item, discuss site visits. I think since the last time we had a couple of site visits, one in Lexington, one in Natick, and I think we haven't had a chance to just talk, the three of us as a group, in what our impressions are about what we saw and what we learned. So who wants to go first? No one. Mark, I call you.
Sure. So, so we're talking about Lexington.
So yeah, Lexington, yeah.
So, I think Lexington did a great job, on both the fire and the police. Um, their IT and telecom and video seems to be first class. And unfortunately, given where we are as a society and a country, and sort of, I think we're going to need that. I suspect it's not cheap. I suspect it's expensive, and I suspect that we're going to rely significantly on IT to connect, all the cameras and the videos and the screens. So I'm just trying to think. Walking through the police station, I felt that it was, you know, I thought the public conference room area seems to be an important piece of it. They seem to do a great job there as far as having a large room, for the public, as well as to coordinate the various facilities during, town events, such as, something like the April 19th event. I don't remember specifics, so I'm not looking at notes. I am struck by there seems to be a lot of administrative space, a lot of office space. I think there were multiple kitchens. So I don't think, I think we might be able to maybe do a little bit tighter job in planning. I think an exercise room is important. I think, I was speaking to Brian a little bit earlier about this, now as opposed to 5 years ago, now all the police officers are wearing vests and a lot of the equipment stays at the station as opposed to being in a car or dragged home. So I think that, although on first glance, when you look at, the Natick, lockers that appear enormous, I think, a locker room is probably an important issue or an important feature that I never thought about. So that being said, I'd love to see the floor plan of each the police station and fire station to sort of remind myself of dimensions. But I still think our exercise here is to really see what sort of best in class is, to identify where we are currently, and then to make some recommendations which are going to be necessary in order for our police department and fire department to serve the public in a modern way. And it's not a commentary as to where we are today, but I think that, if we do get the chance to rebuild or build afresh, there are going to be significant changes that are going to be expensive, but I think that, they're going to be completely focused on public safety and they're going to be great for the citizens.
Yeah, I had some similar impressions. I think what struck me on Lexington, specifically the police building, it seemed a lot of unused space. I was wondering about the ratio of, let's say, hallways to offices and so on. It felt very generous, but that's not like, for us, our job to second guess the perfect design they built there. Um, what I left now with like, all the tours is thinking more is where are potential synergies when with respect to building design if you keep fire and police together. So if you do you need to duplicate a workout room? Yeah. Do you need to say is there synergy by keeping these things together that help us also saving cost? Um, Specifically when you look at like comparing what Lexington Police had and what Fire had. Again, you have double meeting rooms, you have double workout rooms, there were several things I have to look at my notes that were double, where I'm just thinking is might it be in a good interest in when we rank things and then we look at ranking to keep in mind that if you have both together, you might harvest some synergy and things. But it could be that here the representative from fire and police tell us they no way that they work out together in one room.
So Sven, just to tag on a little bit, I think unfortunately the tour of Lexington, particularly the fire, showed us that because of the size of the equipment and the amount of the equipment, we need a lot of parking.
Yeah.
And I
And
know
we
that's
saw that
bad,
today in Natick. Yeah.
so it's bad news from a land use perspective in that we need a bigger footprint, a bigger
Yeah.
piece of land. But I think we do need to seriously consider not only covered parking, if you will, but also outdoor parking, understanding that it probably won't decrease, it will increase. And I was just looking at and I'd be curious to what you guys think about this, but I'm almost, rather than calling West Concord a substation or what have you, I actually now am starting to think that West Concord will be our station and Concord proper, if you will. I don't know if it's right to call it a sub or whatever, but will be a much smaller footprint. Now, if that's the case, Sven, I think that the utopia of sort of putting police and fire together from a planning perspective and utilization perspective might not be achievable if we really have sort of West Concord as our fire station, unless we're going to move the police over there as well. And then if we move the police, there's no need to have a second spot, anywhere other than West Concord for the police.
Yeah, but for fire, we would still need a small presence there.
Correct.
Yeah. Judith, your takes.
Yeah, so obviously it's been very useful to see some of the other facilities, and there are yet, I think, a few more to be seen. And I appreciate the fact that the chiefs have and the deputy chiefs have selected a variety of different things for us to see. So in Lexington, we were able to see sort of a new fire station that's a little bit down the road from a newish police station. Whereas in Natick, we saw a sub fire station, which is sort of like a satellite. And then we also were able to see their police station, which is next to but not adjacent to their main fire station in downtown Natick. So we're sort of getting a sense of not only what the interior build of the buildings are looking like, but we're also getting a sense of how different towns are approaching providing different types of facilities in different locations based on things like response time and so on and so forth, right? So all of that's very interesting and useful. My takeaway from inside the buildings is, yeah, newer is better, right? Newer is better. There are a lot of amenities that modern stations have that our stations do not. And that's become apparent as we've toured. And it's not just a matter of upgrades, like things like locker rooms with bigger lockers and that sort of thing, and that's important. But there are actual amenities that are absent in some of our stations. Certainly, our staff wellness areas, I think, are woefully behind what the other municipalities are providing for their public safety employees. So I think all of those are important considerations. And the other thing that has struck me, I went into this committee thinking that Walden could likely be renovated in some meaningful way to serve either as some sort of continued fire use, some sort of continued police use. And as I've looked at the other buildings and we've spent some time inside Walden, the the configuration of Walden on the site and the current use of the building with basically two separate circulation systems is going to make it very difficult to renovate in a way that would somehow produce the kinds of things that we're seeing in the new builds. So I would say I came into this more bullish on renovation of Walden Street, and I'm coming out of it less I mean, obviously we always want to renovate if it's cheaper and it's better for taxpayers, but I'm just not sure that there's an efficient outcome on Walden Street, which is going to be a surprise to a lot of our residents who drive by that building and think, oh, that looks like it's in pretty good shape. So, I think we're going to have to do a fair bit of communicating around that. Of course, the final decision on renovating Walden, on putting a new main fire station in West Concord, how that would respond to the site, a lot of the nitty-gritty in terms of interior spaces and how much admin and how much equipment room and all that kind of stuff. That's all going to be kind of next stage decisions. The role of our group, I think, is to really help the select board understand, A, what is the condition of our public safety facilities and do they need upgrading, which I think the answer is clearly yes. And then B, are any of the strategic parcels that have become available recently or are likely to come available, are those really in the mix as sites for public safety facilities? So for me, those are the two big things that we need to report on. And I think a lot of the nitty-gritty decisions about design and interior features and even financing and fiscal impacts, a lot of that I think is going to get handed down to the next iteration of this committee, or perhaps a spin-off of this committee that would be dedicated to the question of public safety facilities. The last thing I will say that caught my ear this morning was we have been working under the assumption that a new build would be maybe $800 to $900 a square foot. So $800 a square foot in 2025, but really based on 2024 data. And then today, I think, Sven, I don't know if you were there when we
Yeah,
heard
I
that
heard
number.
that.
Yeah.
I
But
fell off my shoes.
all of us kind of went, oh my goodness, because in Natick, they are pricing a new station, a new fire station, and it's coming in at $1,100 to $1,300 a square foot. Not really sure why that is. I don't know if they've got equipment budget in there, so on and so forth. So we're going to have to learn a little bit more, but that would be a pretty significant bump in our cost estimates. Again, that would become the responsibility of the spin-off committee. but still, I think just a good observation from what we were hearing this morning. And that's the end of my comments.
Yeah,
We,
Mark.
so, when we go to Natick, it's the interesting, if you just look at the data, they're almost twice as large population, but half as large uh, number of land. So half the footprint, double the population. Do we have any data as to what percentage of the town is either conservation? Well, let's just take conservation that could possibly be converted. I don't know how you go about converting it, but again, I think that we're running into some really hard decisions as far as MCI, Junction Village, 229 Main, what have you. The list is quite finite. And I know that we've talked about the pump station across this, on the other side of Walden. And I'm just wondering if there are any obvious parcels that are conservation that, the public may not love it or it may not be the most popular idea. But the reality is we're going to have to put these facilities somewhere. And if we're really planning for 20, 30, 50 years down the road, I'd hate to see us sort of punch ourselves in the nose because we're not thinking of the most available parcels. And maybe those parcels are, again, conservation oriented. However, the reality is that they're not being used or what have you. And this would be a much better municipal use or better use for the town. So I'm just wondering, maybe the answer is absolutely no. I don't know the answer.
Yeah,
Yeah, my
go ahead.
response really quickly would be I think that's outside of our scope, Mark. And only, I mean, obviously we're supposed to be thinking of creative solutions. But I think that will come up in phase two of our work. And in fact, one of the recommendations that I think is going to, so our initial committee is filtering a bunch of ideas. I think there's going to be another spin-off committee that is going to ask the town to undertake a land management analysis and land management strategy, where they're not just looking at conservation, but they're looking at ag land, they're looking at all of their holdings and really being thoughtful about future needs for the town, so on and so forth. Although I would say that for the public safety alternatives, presently most of our thinking, and we're just starting to bleed into the options side, but most of our thinking is currently making use of existing sites. And I barring something that we're not seeing that an expert consultant might see, I think that those two sites are largely usable for the level of analysis that we have now, because otherwise we're talking about response times and thinking about road patterns and all that kind of stuff, and we don't have the data to make that decision. So I think that's a little bit outside of maybe our scope, but certainly the data that we have available to us to make any kind of informed decision.
Yeah, but yeah, I think Mark brings up a important point, which, as you said, could be a certain discussion on phase two. Um, we probably face the opposite, that we are getting more requests to potentially put more land under the
Yeah.
conservation restriction, and we got already two of these kind of letters to us, and that just continues to limit the town more and more. So I think we probably in phase two of the overall group we cannot avoid to discuss the trend of putting more land under conservation restriction. We have, I think, already 40% of Concord land in conservation restriction. And actually, I think I am here in Mark's camp personally to say it's A, we reached the maximum, and B, we have to potentially revert some of the things depending where it goes. But that's not subject to discussion here now.
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly we can discuss it. We just don't
Yeah.
have any information to have
No.
to
Yeah.
make meaningful
Yeah.
recommendations. So we can
Yeah.
flag it and then ask the town to actually undertake the analysis that would be necessary to have that meaningful conversation.
Okay. Anything else on the site visits?
I wondered if our esteemed public safety folks on the call have anything they might want to add. Is that fair, Sven, to
Yeah.
invite them to
Yeah. Please
comment as
just.
staff? Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to say is I think what's striking in all of this, and I think we know it. To put fire and police together is going to take a significantly large footprint. I don't know if Concord has that. That's the one striking issue in and all of this. And I think if as I've listened and everyone has talked, I think there's not a problem with separating us, but I think to try and keep us together, I think is going to be difficult. I just don't know if there's enough land to accommodate it to make it work and give parking and everything else. Yeah, there's some commonalities that obviously like the gym and conference rooms can be, instead of duplicated in two buildings would be great, but I can't vision or picture rather where you could put such a complex.
Well, you could, I mean, you could put it at the current DPW. You could put it at 229 Main, which no one likes. You could put it at Junction Village. You could put it at MCI. There are a whole bunch of places we could put it, right? The question is, do we really want to put it there?
Right. DPW, and we've said this for years that would be one site. It seems like it would have a big enough footprint, passing the eyeball test, right? The other locations, I think, strategically are what the struggle is. Yeah, we could go down to MCI Concord. That's a huge lot. You could put up everything in town down there if you really wanted to, but strategically, does it work?
Well, and I would argue putting on my landowner property real estate hat, what a waste to put police and fire on one of the nicest pieces of land that sits on Route 2. I mean, we need a commercial tax base. So for me, when everyone says, "Oh, let's put, more municipality on MCI," I just sort of, the hairs on the back of my head stand up. It's like that's our commercial opportunity. So I hate to, and again, it's just my own personal opinion, but I just really think that MCI is a blessing and we just need to maximize it. And I don't think municipal use is a good maximization of that piece of property. And that's just my own personal opinion.
Mark, I agree with you. I think if we look at what's available currently for properties being used, um, to me, that makes the most sense, but it does also mean splitting up both departments, which again, I don't think is a big deal. It's just, you know, who's going where. And I mean, I think from the fire side, not speaking for the chief, if they had their main headquarters over at where Station 2 is now and they took over the car wash lot out back, I think that would give them exactly what they need. And then with a substation on this side, but they know more about from a strategic point where they need to be than I do.
Yeah, I guess I'd add number one, just to what you said earlier, Mark. Anywhere, my side, and Brian can answer this on the police side. Anywhere where if we are combined, we work well together. We have a great relationship. I don't think we would need to have separate gyms, for example, if we're in the same building or those types of things. So, from our perspective, we'd be looking at, truly what's the operational priority, meaning do we have the right, office space, apparatus space, interview space, jail space for the police, and anything beyond that, we certainly wouldn't. If someone else had it, it's a nicety. We don't need to have our own stuff. We have a good relationship, and then I would say that in talking again a little bit more with the fire chief in Natick, Jason, I think some of these, and it sounds like this may be where the next step is anyway. Some of these answers or some ideas might even come out if we do end up in one of those program analysis for both police and fire, and they look at the properties, and they just because they do this, they'll combine everything in there, including response times, which is something that again you hear me say a lot. It's really and it's based on the service delivery to the community. That's the only reason I talk about response times, and they can look at that combined with what we're offering, what the police are doing, and that whole program, and I really feel, I think he said, $100,000 estimate or something along those lines. And that may be if he's correct with that number, certainly might be a great investment to get all of that, much better data to make the decisions going forward and see, maybe we find out there is a way to work a lot into a more efficient use than we're thinking, just looking at it, as employees right now or even committee members. That's my thought.
Okay. All right. So let's move to the next agenda item. And what's the official name for that? Let me call this here. That's discuss options and evaluations. And Judith, I understand you prepared, based on what we discussed last time, at least the next version and a pre-populated bone we can chew on, and and try to take it from there. What are the different options and how we can evaluate these things? You want to share your screen?
Sure, as long as everybody chews on the bone, not on Judith. Okay. You guys see that okay?
Yeah.
You actually read the text. I know it's hard.
Yeah, it's great. I
Okay,
can see it.
good. So based on our conversation last time, it became clear to me that it was hard to follow the options in part because we were already talking about combinations instead of just looking at it building by building. So I've reconfigured the options into these four groupings, and some of them are things we're already talking about. So the fire station in West Concord is the first one. It's I think the biggest priority, so that's why it's number one. And then you can see that there's some options to the right of that. The second is the fire station in Concord Center. The third is the police station in Concord Center. Now, of course, those are co-located, but we're just thinking about them as functions at this point. And then four is what kinds of combinations might be possible there. And we were obviously just having that conversation. So if we look at the West Concord Fire Station, we have four options. The first is to keep the status quo and just, try to keep feeding money into O&M and hope that we can keep the building going for a little while longer. You can see that that already has a strike through, meaning that, we're really thinking that that is not an option at this point. 1B is to renovate. We've discussed renovation at that building. There's really no way to cost effectively renovate that and get to the footprint that we need, particularly if we want to build a new larger scale fire station. So 1A and 1B are just options that we considered, but we have largely eliminated them. 1C is to build a new main fire station on the current site. And 1D is to build a new main fire station on an alternate site, but still in West Concord, right? And that pretty much captures the nature of the conversation. Mark, I see your hand, just one sec. But keeping in mind that we're using main and sub here, and we may decide that there are better descriptors, but for now, the idea is that the larger fire station of the two in town would be in West Concord in response to increasing demand, population growth, and distribution of population on that side of town. Mark.
So Judith, is it a little bit misleading? Like 1C is really build new fire station, and really current site is like an asterisk, right? The big asterisk is we would need more land because we couldn't really build a new fire station on the
Yeah.
current.
So there just wasn't room on the slide, Mark.
Okay.
So when we get to the pros and cons for each one, it does say pretty clearly, here you can see it right there, expanded.
Okay.
Right. So yeah. So we're just trying, I think none of us, 16 options, I think is plenty, right? I don't want to have a 16A that says, with just the Concord Oil, just the car wash site, or just, this, that, and that site. So we just assume that in the vicinity of the current site.
Okay.
Make sense? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I guess just because I'm driven, wired this way, for me, it would just in parentheses, you could put expanded or something so that no one's going to hold us to any sort of thought process. But I hear you. No problem.
Yeah, that's an easy fix. No problem. So the second one is the fire station in Concord Center, and each of them starts with status quo, right? So the range of options starts with, do we just stay there, keep feeding money into O&M and just try to last a few more years? We've also talked about that, and I think as a group, we've largely recommended that we eliminate that option. 2B is renovate Walden Street as some smaller version of the existing fire station. We have bandied around this idea of renovation, and it does appear in the pros and cons chart coming forward, if only because we haven't had the cost study or an expert consultant come in and say, yeah, you really can't renovate that, right? We've offered our opinions, but we're offering our opinions based on really no, really good evidence aside from our individual opinions and our visual impressions, right? So I think that stays on the list for now, and it would probably get evaluated in a needs assessment that would be done by this spin-off committee, right? And so it remains on the chart, even though I know most of us are feeling like that isn't really an option, but it stays on the chart for now. And then we have the same scenarios: build new sub fire station on Walden Street site, so that would be a smaller fire station to serve Concord Center on the existing Walden Street site, or do the same, but do it on an alternate site, right? So that just kind of captures, and there, in terms of alternate sites, there might be 1, 2, 3 alternate sites, but again, that can be done by an expert during the spinoff committee work. Then we have the police station. So you're kind of getting the rhythm here, right? We start with status quo. We all agree, I think, that the status quo at Walden Street is not tenable, nor is it cost efficient going forward. 3B, renovate Walden Street as a police station only. So again, that would, even though we all have our opinions about renovation, that stays on the list because it can be fed to the consultant to make the final decision on whether or not that makes any sense. And then 3C, which is to build a new police station on the current site, so that's Walden, or build a new police station on an alternative site somewhere in town, right? Then we have the combinations, which are the things we've already been talking about, right? So one possible combination is to build the main fire station and a police station in West Concord. That should say existing site. It shouldn't say Walden Street site. And I do think that we would have a massing issue and a site issue, as Brian raises, right? I think now that we've seen some of the police stations and some of the fire stations elsewhere, it's hard to imagine what the building massing would look like, not for the equipment bay, but for the administrative side of the building. But again, that's just our impressions. No, we're not doing site planning. We're not analyzing any of this. We don't have program data. So that really has to be handed off to an expert consultant. That's what they do. They'll figure it out. Another option is to have the sub fire station and the police station in Concord Center at the existing Walden Street site, right? So 4A is do main fire and police combo on the existing West Concord site. Again, that first Walden Street is a typo. And then the second one is to do a combo on the existing Walden Street site or a new site in Concord Center. So we've talked about variations on that theme. And then 4C, which is interesting because I think this is what Brian was getting at, police Brian, not fire Brian, is that do we need to think about options where there are 3 standalone buildings? One for a new fire station in West Concord, one for a sub-fire in Concord Center, and one for police. And we certainly, the big con there is you lose some of the synergies, but is that going to be something that's inevitable based on the size of parcels that we have in front of us? 4D was 3 functions in one central campus. That again has a strike through because it was really hard to envision any location from which the fire services can be delivered effectively throughout the town from one location, right? We just didn't think the response times, there wasn't a central location that manages to keep us within an 8 to 9 minute response time everywhere in town. So that's why that has a strike through. Okay, so that's the option categories. And then within each option, so you can see we have like a little chart for each color. So the idea is that we're just thinking about this in terms of what are the different options within that category, and then some preliminary thoughts about cost versus lifespan, simple pros, simple cons. And when something is grayed out on this chart, that responds to the strike through. So in other words, status quo for the fire station in West Concord, we've eliminated that. Cannot meet fire station needs. Renovation of the West Concord Fire Station, eliminated. Cannot meet, fire station needs. So really, in this chart, we're down to the new fire station, call it Main, call it something else, but a new fire station on the Main Street site, here, keyword expanded. We could say Main Street location instead of site. That also might give us a little wiggle room, Mark, in terms of definition. And then we've got sort of our list of pros and cons. I mean, we can all read these. I don't know that I want to go through them in detail, right? But do people at least agree that this is the main set of options for West Concord? And do people agree that both of these options could meet our fire needs in West Concord? The only difference between 1C and 1D is one is at the existing Main Street site and the other is at an alternate site, TBD, by a consultant. Mark.
My only comment is that 1C, current location expanded site, could be more expensive because of the land acquisition costs, depending upon. So for me, again, 1C is a big asterisk and a big footnote saying, hey, it would be awesome, but oh, by the way, we'd have to do an acquisition, and acquisitions can be difficult for many reasons.
Yeah. So this is in the cons, right? So it says requires land acquisition, costs unclear. But then keep in mind that 1D also requires an acquisition. I don't think there's a town, unless you want to go to MCI, which I don't think we do. It's not clear what these other sites might be. And again, there are these public safety consultants that I think in the spinoff committee that's very much part of what they do is they look at sort of available parcels within a response time circle and then try to evaluate if there's another site. So I do think that acquisition is involved in both.
You have one thing on this in cost lifespan for 1C and 1D, which you put in timing and priority. I like that. I think it's good to document that. Hey, we have a big problem on the West Concord fire station. It's doesn't serve its purpose. The fire truck barely gets in, and we only have one guy being able to drive the truck in and out. And we have all the growth there. We have the 40Bs. We have whenever it comes to MCI. So addressing West Concord fire station, at least from my perspective, has this very high priority for the town. So I like that you have that in there.
Okay, cool. So let me ask all of you, including, our public safety staff on the call, how do you feel about this layout? I will say that I was working more on the conceptualization of the framework than I was on all of the particular details that are in the pros and cons column. So I would ask everybody to, after the meeting, maybe go through these with a finer tooth comb and sort of get me any comments about how we might better word some of these things or if something important is missing. But how do you feel about the framework, number one? And number two, is this a useful way of presenting it in the call, kind of going through them one by one? Or does anybody have a better idea?
I like it.
Judith, I like it. I like the way this is laid out, the framework, because it segregates all the options and it gives you something to really kind of focus on and debate. It's more than the other sheet, obviously, where it just kind of it's very short and sweet and to the point. I just like the way this is laid out. Best way I can put it. It makes a lot of sense to me.
Does it make sense? That's because I think as we're trying to work from framing what I think all of the things that we've learned. And I'm pretty pleased. I think a lot of us are really, we're 95% all on the same page, right? Which is
Yeah.
a nice place to be. But I also I would like this to get to the point where if we had to share some version of this publicly, that the public could also understand our thought process. So, and I also don't want to waste a lot of time on the calls, explaining things that you guys think maybe I could go through a little bit more quickly. So, any comment after I've done this one, because there's three more to do.
No,
So
from my our perspective as well, I agree with Brian. It's laid out nicely and makes sense.
I guess, Judith, when I look at it now and thinking about it, now that I'm reading it, I guess I'm potentially leaning more on the 1D side just because of the service disruption issue.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we should highlight that
So,
fact.
so you mean service disruption on the current West Concord side?
Correct.
But if, let's say, in a scenario where let's say the town would be able to acquire the lot behind it, you could build the lot behind it first, move stuff, move in, and then do the final renovating or whatever you need to do up front.
I just don't know, Sven, if I would agree with your conclusion or statement that you can do that. If you could do that, that would be fantastic. I just don't know the sizes of relative pieces of land and what footprint we actually need and how it would be configured. But I agree with you. If that was possible, that would be great.
Okay.
Yeah. We may have to find, I mean, as part of the implementation. And again, I hate to keep saying we punt this to the next committee, but the problem is we really don't have enough information in front of us. But the Public Safety Building Committee, or whatever we're going to call them, would also be looking at service disruption and possibly renting a building that they could use during the construction phase and stuff, right? So there are solutions to service disruption, but yes, a new going to an alternate site relieves us of that burden, which I think is a fair point, right?
Yep.
All right. Are folks ready for the next one?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the fire station in Concord Center on Walden Street. So we have the same sort of framework here where the status quo, it's grayed out, it's eliminated because it does not meet, our fire station needs in Concord Center. 2B is not grayed out, mainly because, again, our intuition is that a cost study would reveal that this probably wasn't cost efficient, but we haven't had that cost study done. And I think it would be a very short piece of work for the needs assessment and feasibility study consultant when hired to make that determination, and then it'll be done, right? So,
And it would be yeah, you have that, a shorter lifespan. Yeah.
yes. Yeah, that's a renovation. And like one way of thinking about this is a renovation buys you 20 to 30 before, and probably on the 20 side before needing additional renovation. Whereas building new, it's the lifespan in public safety, as we look at our older facilities, seems to run closer to 40 to 50. And one of the things we've determined by talking to other folks is that they're building for 50-year lifespans, which is why some of the newer buildings seem to be excessively sized, right? So
I I have a question to fire Brian here. Um,
I thought you said to fire, like
no, not to fire Brian,
Right.
to
we need a
up.
new
Brian
word.
Whitney of the fire department. Sorry, sorry.
I didn't take it that way, son, but it is kind of funny.
And that is again looking at the option before where you say there will be let's say there's building going on with high priority in West Concord. So while you build that, um, is there a phasing where you feel how long could you camp out in the current setting of Concord Center to just keep that running while that is done and finished, and then we would be able to either renovate or build something in Concord Center. So for me, it's a phasing question. and it depends on how long you think you can camp out there.
Yeah, I think it'd be a couple of things, like you said earlier, depending on the land footprint and the design we come up with, there is that possibility of phased of a phase building, which has a combo of staying in the existing building while the first part's done. You might move apparatus over to a new area and bring in trailers for office and living space while they do the next sections, and then you finally move in. The other thing with, depending on how it goes, just through our experience when we had the Station 2 fire, we did rent some of the um, parking lot down at the MBTA lot way down the back end by 68 Com Ave. So there's always the ability to potentially find a spot to rent as well. And we can I forget how long we were there for the Station 2 rebuild, but we were there for a decent amount of time. So that's a long way of saying I think it's more than likely pretty feasible in one way or the other, whether we can move around the current site with a combo of old building trailers and then move into new finalized building, or find someone that has a decent enough size space to rent out for us. That combined with shifting some stuff down to the Walden Street station just for storage. We want to keep the response staff up in West Concord to maintain a response to the community. So I think we could build on our previous experience when we had to take care of everything after the fire.
Where were we? Okay, so all good points. And then I think we were just talking about whether or not the new fire substation, and again, we might want to change that wording. I don't know if we want to say primary and secondary or
I mean,
whatever.
if you want to, it's a main station works. If you want to use vernacular that's used in a lot of the fire service, they do typically call it a headquarters.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Headquarters, if you want to call it that, that implies all of the primary operations, the bulk of not the bulk, but the biggest set of operations out of that station. Headquarters it's pretty common.
Well, actually, that's great, Brian, because because Main Street, like we talk about a main station on Main
Right.
Street, it's
Yeah.
confusing. So I love HQ.
Right. With a main
Um,
street that also runs to both ends of town. So headquarters is pretty common.
yeah, love it. And is sub the correct term
Yeah,
to describe a secondary station?
substation or outstation is what people will call them.
Okay.
I think substation for us will
Okay.
work fine.
So I'm making, by the way, it's hard to make changes on the fly here. So I'm trying to write some of them down, like the expanded site comment from Mark, but I will go back and make changes in the deck. It's just hard to do it while we're talking.
Judith, a quick question. Um, do you think that we need any sort of environmental wetland or any sort of other study on 2B? In that if it's really flooding or it has flooded in the past, is it time to just realize the reality? It's not a great site for a 50-year building.
Well, and I think that factors into 2C as well, right, Mark? I think that this is where, again, the folks that do this kind of analysis, who, the more typical study they do is, yeah, we need a new substation in X part of town, and they'll come in and do all the site analysis. They'll look at all the parcels and they'll investigate, sort of the development conditions, and make a recommendation about a site to select for a new station. So the folks who do this work should be able to easily build that into their evaluation of the site. And that's where the difference between 2C and 2D will come into play, including thinking about that public works site a little bit further up Walden, closer to Thoreau Street, right? But for us, the challenge is we don't really have a good sense of all the possible sites. Our charge was really to look at these opportunity sites and to figure out, do we want to make use of 2229 and so on and so forth. So to do the kind of site selection analysis that would be involved in 2D, right? Because it doesn't have to theoretically stay on Walden, right? Could go somewhere else if there was a possible site. But I do think, and we could highlight, Mark, if you can make a note for your notes for me for these charts to say, maybe we want to put that in the chart more clearly, because I think, again,
Yeah.
the detailed wording, I didn't really do a super fine-tuned job on, but I've got site configuration and wetland drainage limitations under 2B, but that also belongs under 2C, right?
Yeah, but you could do it as a pro in 2D to say, a new land could have a less flooding risk.
Well, I don't think that we turn a negative on another site into a positive on a different site. But I think we do say, depending on site, could deliver additional design and site planning
Yeah,
flexibility, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, right. It's really interesting to me how the logic has just become super clear. Like, our 6 months of chewing on this, I don't think, even if we don't have detailed data, has been really helpful because there's just some essential logic that's playing into this, right? Okay, are folks ready to go to the next one, or is there more
Yep.
questions on this one?
Yeah, they're good.
Brian's, are we good? I'm going to call you Fire Safety Brian, and not sounding like it's a campaign to
Now
relieve
this
you of
will
your
stick with
responsibility.
me forever.
I remember in that meeting, Sven, where you recommended that we fire Brian. Okay, and then the police station in Concord Center, right? So again, the same kind of layout, status quo. Can we renovate it? Can we build on the same site, or do we build on a new site? And again, we've eliminated status quo. That building in its present form is not working for anyone. We sense that renovation probably won't work, but again, we just need the cost study to eliminate that as an option, and that should happen fairly early on, I would think, in the needs assessment and feasibility study. So then we're down to, this conversation that we've already kind of started to have, and that appears on the next set of options as well, which is, do we, if we get rid of the fire presence entirely and tear the building down, could we build a new police station? Maybe do we call it a police HQ, Brian Goldman, like police Brian? What do you guys call your main station?
Police station.
Well, I guess you've only got one, so we don't need
Yeah,
to
they
Right.
really
only have a
name it
headquarter.
sub, right?
Yeah, that's typically, I mean, Boston obviously has satellite precincts and then they have the main headquarters, but we just have the one and the hope would be we could throw it like a little mini substation somewhere like you saw in Natick, which is essentially a room.
Right. And by the way, I think that's embedded. It's kind of assumed here. I didn't put that out as a combination to have the sub police station be in any of the fire stations because I think it's a pretty small ask. So we'll just call it a police station, right? So can we put a new police station in a configuration that makes any sense on the existing Walden site? If not, if we tear the building down and start fresh, don't know. Maybe, maybe not. It's a weird geometry. Or does the new police station just go to an alternate site? That includes combinations, standalone, so on and so forth. All right, everybody with?
Yep.
Okay, and again, we can refine the wording. So, police Brian, you might want to look at this one. Fire Brian, you might want to look at the two before and just look for precise wording. And lawyer Mark can look at the wording across all of them. And then here's the combinations.
Just real
So,
quick, what does it mean, Jibs, when you say West Concord building highest priority? What does that mean?
When we talk about the timing, and this comes up a little bit later, Mark, and maybe more clearly, but certainly I see that this isn't as clear as it could be. The timing of a new police station, if we think about phasing, we haven't discussed this, but if we said like in the first 5 years, the most important thing to do is to solve West Concord. So that's the first phase or first priority, and we just put 5 years on it as a kind of holding note. The second phase of dealing with our public safety facilities would then be, in my opinion, we haven't discussed it, but would be to deal with the police station. So that's why it gets 5 to 10 years, because it would almost be in the second phase, if you will. And the reason I put it here is to understand that the West Concord building would be a higher priority than dealing with the police station right away. And we can debate that, right? Like I'm just trying to put stuff in the charts that makes sense because we may decide that the police station is in fact a higher priority. But that's kind of the thinking. Does that make sense? It's probably confusing. Should I just take that out?
It's confusing.
Yeah, just take it out.
Yeah,
Right. So noted. Can somebody put that in their notes just in case I miss it? But yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
everybody
because
agree?
they could be specific on a 3D in an alternative site. Um, they're given out of some of the options of the municipal consolidation group. There could be suddenly a location or capacity that would be somewhere in the vicinity of a larger municipal building, and police could sit next to it. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe
So
it could be phase.
that could suddenly prioritize it totally up because that opportunity is only available at a certain time frame, and you just execute against it because it's available.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could put like I could put instead of in each of the charts, um, we could put phase one, phase two, phase three, or something, or we could just simply leave it off the table and just use timing.
I would just use timing, because we have to bring the phasing together in the whole group, I think.
Yeah, fair.
Well, and I think the heading of the column is lifespan.
Yeah.
It's not priority or anything else, unless you want to start changing your heading or our heading.
I'm not even sure like that scope is necessary because I think we understand that some of these are more complicated than others. Like, do people feel like scope needs to be in there?
It's fine.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Brian, any more thoughts on the police station chart? I mean, obviously, like, please, I will send these to you by email and you can just send me any notes. Um, but I don't know if you have any thoughts immediately.
I think it captures it. I mean, I think it's pointing in the right direction. And to your point, doing an analysis on what the need is and what makes the most sense will kind of dictate where it should go. And then if they say come back and say, all right, build something on the present site just for police, then they can figure out the whole conservation piece and see how, what actually can be done here and would it fit the need?
Yeah, agreed. Okay. So then we have the combinations, right? Which may or may not be a good idea, but we have, we have, I think, the four big buckets. Let's start with the one that we eliminated, which is 4D, which was the idea of a single central campus. And we, even though there are synergies on operating costs and training and all that kind of stuff, I mean, it's kind of an ideal scenario from a synergy point of view, but the centralized location, I think the only site that we really thought about would have been like adjacent to Route 2 near the hospital. And it's still hard to imagine how the fire department would be able to maintain its response times to the furthest points of the town from a centralized location. So can we all agree that we eliminated that one?
Yep. And I just think for clarity, do a parenthesis that just says no fire sub or no subs. So that people understand that, no one's getting a substation. It's one central campus. That's it.
Okay. Can you put that in your notes, Mark, for me? Yeah. So again, it'd be nice if I could do this on the fly, but then it becomes so small you can't read it. So then we have, I think, our three kind of bucket combinations. And in each of those buckets, there are varying sites, right? But the bucket itself is broader than the specific location. So 4A is, do we build a fire HQ and police station in West Concord, like a combination building, or I mean, combination, or are they two large buildings next to each other? So a combination fire headquarters and police station in West Concord. Obviously, cost would be high, blah, blah, blah. The main pros are the synergies, and the main con is that certainly it's going to be a much bigger building footprint. And that makes it unclear whether or not the Main Street site could work. But is there even another site in West Concord where if the building footprint is super large, that we could, that we could put those two together? The sub that we saw today they made a deliberate choice to make it one story with their admin and bunkhouse spaces. And that could have been two stories and made the building probably seem a fair bit smaller. But it is, I mean, I remember when we first talked about the West Concord site and even the expanded version that goes into Westgate back into the car wash and possibly, other parcels in that location. I remember sizing it for the Lexington Fire Station, right? Like you can take the Lexington Fire Station and superimpose it on the site. And Brian Whitney, you and I had talked about this and it kind of works, but I didn't do it for both. And I do have concerns about the footprint and whether or not we can get both on the same site. That said, the expert consultant that the building committee picks up should be able to figure that out, right?
So again, parenthetically, 4A is fire sub in Concord at Walton.
Fire HQ, that's the West Concord side.
No, but in other words, if we're talking about 4A being a combination of West Concord, right?
Yes.
Isn't there something left, and isn't it fire at Walden or an alternate site?
So that's 4B.
Oh,
Wait, no. What he's saying is 4A is HQ Fire and Police Station West Concord and a fire sub remaining in Concord Center.
Oh, yeah. That's what's happening with the other building is an assumption, right? So we're talking here just about that specific building because you can't write the pros and cons about multiple sites and have it fit in any meaningful way, right? So this is really just talking about combination buildings, not what the full set of the solution would be, right?
You
I
have
get,
you have
I get
three
your point.
puzzle pieces. It's HQ Fire, Police, and Sub Fire. These are the three puzzle pieces. And option A is taking only the two puzzle pieces, HQ Fire and Police, and leaves the Sub Fire in Concord. Option B takes the puzzle piece, Sub Fire and Police, and leaves the HQ in West Concord. So I'm thinking about puzzle pieces to just with these labels. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally get, I mean, I actually completely get the point that it would be more clear if we expressed what would happen with all three. It just gets harder to write the
Yeah.
pros and cons
Yeah.
because now you're talking about, like, if you say something about the site being constrained, but it is for one, but it isn't for the other, it gets confusing.
Yeah, we
Uh,
just have to be very specific when we present it, and people understand, yes, that's what this is. And
Yeah. So if folks can come up with suggestions about
yeah,
how to, represent that more clearly,
yeah.
then yeah, please just let me know because I completely understand. Um, so that's 4A, and the challenge with 4A, and we'll need to talk about that more, is again, it's becoming complicated to imagine what that would look like unless the administrative component of the fire station and the police station were in a vertical organization, right? And then that becomes meaning multi-story building, right? And then that gets to be a pretty big building in terms of massing for West Concord. But we'll see, right? And again, we don't have enough information about program and square footage to really understand what that combination would look like, which is why we need the consultants to do that. And this is their bread and butter, and they can do it. 4B is the sub-fire plus police station configuration in Concord Center, whether that's on Walden Street, which I think we all agree that might be really tough, even in a new building that might be tough, or it might be in a different location. Right, so that's a possibility, and we can have have the consultant figure that out. Does everybody understand?
I think it's when we present this, even in prior things, we have to have at least some wording around what is the other location.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So
So I think is to Mark's point, we have the land around the pump station, which is just across the street and is conveniently located. So that's one other location. The other one is Kais Road, that might be freed up depending, or most likely be freed up subject to the recommendation of the other group. But then the select board needs to decide what is the priority of use there on that end.
Well, so you could have 4A1, which is existing site, and 4A2, which is alternative site, and then 4B1, which is existing site, and 4B2, which is alternative site.
Yeah, you don't need to do that here. It's just we need the wording is that people will ask when we say on the current site or alternative site, that we say, yeah, there are a few, but you really need to have a design spec for this and see does it fit? What fits on really on the lot around this pump station? Is that big
I
enough?
get that. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to see how it sits within the framework of this chart. So if you can make some, I'm happy to integrate
Yeah,
whatever
let me
suggestions.
think about
Yeah,
it.
just play
Yeah,
around with it a little bit.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because we can make whatever changes you guys want, and any changes that make it more
Yeah.
clear, I think are absolutely welcome. And then 4C is 3 standalone buildings, right? Which stands in contrast to 4D, right? So do we, is the only reasonable scenario, and again, this is going to be a job for the consultants, not for us. But do we need 3 standalone buildings on either the existing sites or new sites?
Yeah, and not to be a troublemaker, but I don't see how 4C is a combination. Isn't a 4C like a separation?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah. I was looking at just saying other, but you're right, it is. It's not a combination. Should that maybe be 4D and then we just call it for combinations and other or something? Combinations, disaggregations.
And the easiest is just create another set, and set 5 is, 3 separate buildings. But I don't feel strongly about it.
I totally get your point. I really don't want to make another chart.
Okay.
But I totally get your point. I don't know. If somebody comes up with a great idea about that, I'm all ears. It might need a separate category. Just although 3 standalone buildings, by the way, is also captured in 1, 2, and 3 in a way, right?
Yeah, but it's good to spell it out. I think it's very good to spell it out.
Okay. So then when we try to summarize this, right, again, this is all just draft, like just playing around with how to visually represent this when we talk to people about it. Here we have each of those options identified. The ones that we've already eliminated are in red. The ones that we're still kind of thinking about are in the colored version. And you'll see that, for example, renovate Walden Street is neither eliminated nor is it highlighted because that's not going to be one of our major recommendations is to renovate, but we are going to recommend that they do the cost study to eliminate it as an option. Do you kind of see how I'm approaching it? So that's my thinking. Do you guys think this works as a
So on other
mechanism?
3, why didn't you highlight 3D?
Because I was using this as an example, just using
Oh,
this
that's
as an
just an
example. Yeah.
example. Oh,
So I
okay.
think, for example, in 2D, we would also highlight, oops, sorry. In 2D, we would highlight this one. We would highlight this one as well. And then
Yeah.
3 standalone buildings, maybe that one needs to be highlighted now. Right? So really, we're talking about this. We've kind of talked through this and agreed, and yes, we need to highlight and stuff, but how do you feel about this as a visual representation of the summary of the options, right? So we've gone from
Yeah, me, it confuses me more than before.
so maybe don't do it.
I would say just don't highlight it because we go through it. We already have the details things.
So I could just go like this. This I can do on the fly. Bloom, bloom, bloom. So just do it like that, Sven.
So like we had it, yeah. Because some of the stuff is you say, for example, in 2, you say it's
Like this one, we could cross out and put, cost study required or some such. Well, it's because at some point I think we have to tell the other groups, which of these do we think make the most sense, and which of these do we think we would forward to
I
a
think
building committee?
I think in 2 and 3, each of these is depending so much on is Walton Street usable or not? The current site. Is this renovatable or not at all?
Yeah, it says the
Yeah.
building
If
useful
it's
is number
not
one, and then the
renovatable,
site.
it collapses automatically to a smaller number of options.
Yep.
And that's the one thing we didn't get, that we get like someone looking at that building and tell us, you know what, it costs so much, better build new.
Or if someone comes back and says that Walden Street is just not an appropriate land use,
Yeah, or that.
we're
Yeah.
getting rid of 2B, 2C, and then 3B and 3C. So we're eliminating
Yeah.
4 options.
So
Yeah,
I
because
think the biggest recommendation is that the town needs to do that kind of analysis ASAP.
yeah,
Right.
and that's on the recommendations sheet.
And then it
Coming up.
collapses very fast to a smaller amount. And then the next collapse is there alternative site for on the Concord Center side that is like big enough to take both. So I don't know if the land around the pump station is big enough to take both. If not, then it's only for one, and then you collapse down to 3 separate buildings. It's I think it's if you look at the decision path, it's getting very quick, so you can do to that as kind of renovate Walden, feasible or not, for several reasons. No, collapse, what's remaining, which sites are available and which you can use. You can only use site A and B, and then it collapses to the final outcome.
Right. And I mean, it's when we look at the B scenarios are about Walden as a building. The C scenarios are about Walden as a site,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So, in the case of
yeah,
anything but West Concord, right? So it starts to collapse pretty quickly. But the
yeah.
problem is, we're talking
Someone
about.
needs to do the work. Yeah,
Yeah, somebody needs to do the work. So here, keeping those in mind, here are when I'm trying to think about how this report is going to wrap up, right? Because at this point, without some actual expert input, there isn't much more we can do. But here are some examples of what I think our recommendations could look like. And again, this is just me spitballing, so we can talk about these, we can add, we can subtract, we can do whatever we want. And these are a little bit in some kind of order as well. So number one, so this is a recommendation from our subgroup report, right? So if we were asked, what are the recommendations from the subgroup report that would go to the land use working group? Number one, Concord's public safety facilities are in urgent need of upgrading, right? So let's just make that super clear. Number two, that the select board establish a dedicated public safety building committee to guide next steps. Number three, that the Public Safety Building Committee hire and oversee the work of a fire police EMS facility consultant to make recommendations about building design, location, costs, and fiscal impacts. And by the way, Mark, the PPP thing could go in there as well, like creative financing. Number four, that new construction is likely more cost efficient than renovating, given the specialized nature of these facilities, changing standards and technology, and the challenges of retrofitting older buildings. And notice we use is likely because, again, this is what we think, but it's not what we know. Number five, that a new main fire / HQ or combined fire HQ plus police facility be built in West Concord in recognition of shifting population distribution and new development. Six, that a new main fire HQ or combined main fire HQ police facility be built on the existing Main Street site in West Concord, provided adjacent parcels can be acquired in a cost-effective and time-effective manner. Now we may disagree about that, right? Because it almost presumes that the Main Street site would be our first choice if the expanded parcels were able to be acquired. And I don't know that that's how everybody feels, right? People may feel differently. So we might have to
Wait,
revisit
wait.
number six.
What's the difference
So
between 5 and 6?
number 5 says that we need the new fire HQ needs to be in West Concord. I think using HQ is going to be super helpful. We need the fire HQ to be in West Concord because that's where the population is. That's where the new development is. That's what number 5 is saying. Number 6 is trying to say, rightly or wrongly, that if we're going to build a new fire station in West Concord, the existing site should probably be our first choice if we can get those adjacent parcels because all of the externalities are already built in. Site selection for a fire and
Okay,
police
could we
station.
do that 5A and 5B?
Sure.
Because then we
Yeah.
know it belongs together.
Yeah, that's fine too. If you can put
Yeah.
that in your notes. And then number 7 is that the Walden Street site be reviewed as the site for a new fire substation for Concord Center or a new police station or a combined fire and police station. And that's basically saying, the new building committee, just take a look at Walden and tell us whether it's useful or not, right? And they'll tell us, is it useful? Is it not?
Could we say something here to say it's reviewed? Yeah, I'm just thinking about more like a feasibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think where you're going, Sven, is where I am, and that is really although we can make those recommendations, I think our two key recommendations is number 1 is Walden Street usable, and then number 2 is West Concord. Is it even practicable to think that we can do an acquisition to enlarge that site? Because if we can't, the site's not useful. So it's like
Right.
figuring out those two things.
But we can't figure them out, Mark, because we
I
don't have
know.
information. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, but is the order 7 and 8 not switched, what we just discussed before?
It could be 7A and 7B as well. I mean, it's
Okay.
really just pointing out that the renovation fee, so we could almost change it to suitability of building and then suitability of site. And then number 8 could come before number 7, right? So first off, we need to review the Walden Street building to see if it's at all salvageable through renovation. And then the next one is, if there's no building on the site, what do we still think about the site? Is the site useful at all for public safety uses? And so this is in a way giving a bit of a terms of reference or suggestions about terms of reference and scope to the subsequent committee.
Yeah, I'll just my own 2 cents here. It's almost like, for me, like the immediate due diligence is the two things we talked about, right? Because if you do the due diligence and Walden's not usable, let's not talk about it anymore. And then number 2, it shouldn't be that hard to do diligence on, is it possible that either the gas station or the car wash would even be receptive to acquisition? If not, take it off the table. So it's like those are immediate steps that should be done, like, Ken, immediately, even before this public subgroup is even put in place, unless you think that it can be put in place so quickly, and their first order of business is going to be those 2 key sort of points or diligence points.
Yeah, we've been trying to do due diligence on those points for like 5 months and we've gotten nowhere. Right. So, we have realtors out talking to the folks who have those adjacent parcels. We haven't heard anything back in a meaningful way. We've gone through all of this procurement challenges with staff trying to hire somebody to just go in and do an assessment of the building. And again, that's just been a lot of spinning wheels. So I think those are great questions. They're questions that we all had at the outset, but 6 months later, we're still no further ahead. So I think the idea is to simply take those questions, which are good ones, and then knit them into the kind of study that a consultant would do. because it doesn't really change very much the nature of our work to leave in options that we think are probably less likely than others.
So let me do that is let me get I think this it's all there. I'm just thinking it's we have to restructure this a little bit. I can take a run on that and restructure this. It will not change the nature of our recommendation. I just want to make it more logical, clear for the normal select board member to read.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like I wrote these at 11:40 last
Yeah,
night,
no,
so it's not
absolutely.
like
This is great
it's
work.
not
This
like
is
they've
not
been
doesn't
vetted.
I don't want to imply that this is bad work or whatever. It is.
No,
We
I
had
don't
so
think
much
you are.
discussion in the first 1 hour and 20 minutes that helped us to understand kind of that collapsing tree we just discussed. And I'm just thinking as perhaps we're just sorting this along that you can see that in there. So
And
I can take a run on that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it's follow
absolutely.
up, Judith. I know I've been a pain in the ass, but it's more my DNA than anything else. But I totally appreciate the work you've done. I'm not meaning to
Oh no, I
question or
don't think
make
you
any
guys
sort
are
of judgment.
nitpicking. No, I'm fine. I'm just saying I'm perfectly happy to put draft wording out for everybody to spitball on. So now if you guys can take the time to really like go through it, and I can put it in a Word doc, and then everybody can massage it a little bit or make recommendations. And that, by the way, includes the staff who have some nuance here. And then this is the only way to actually have this conversation because we're trying to write this report across a number of people. So let's throw it out in the spirit it's offered is just a starting point, and let's get everybody in there and make it actually read in a way that respects everybody's opinion and then also is clear to our other land use working
Yeah,
group
and
members.
I think we're 99% there. It's
And just my 2 cents on
yeah.
5 and 6, Judith, is that for me, it's an absolute 100% recommendation that we need a new fire headquarters in West Concord.
I think that
Parenthetically,
is that not
no, but and if we get the land to have the combination, fantastic. But it's still my personal view is that we have to have a West Concord headquarter given all the stuff we've talked about. And if we can somehow find a piece and we can sneak in, have a public facility as well, that's a huge bonus. Um, so
Yeah, so maybe that moves. So part of the issue there, Mark, too, is I think it's like the proviso in commas or combined main or police, main fire and police facility. Maybe that comes in parentheses at the end so that we
okay,
don't lose the emphasis on the new fire HQ. And I think changing some of the labeling away from main to HQ is actually going to really
yeah.
help with clarity. So let's maybe Sven takes a kick at it and then Mark can take a kick at it or whatever order. Um, and then it can go to the Bryans and everybody can take a stab and recommend like what's the best flow and how
And
specifically do we want to word things.
yeah, and they just because of meeting laws, we can't just work on this
Oh,
together.
right. I always forget that. It's so
Yeah.
inefficient.
So let me take a step on this table. And then I will just send it to you, Judith. Um, how do we do that?
well, can't well, I can send you spend comments.
Yeah,
So why don't I do that?
yeah.
And then why don't you take a look at my comments? Then you can shoot Judith some revisions and comments ideas.
Okay.
And can the Bryans do that as well?
The
Yes.
Bryans are not part of the quorum. The quorum. It's the question of the three of us as the quorum of the.
So how do we get feedback on some of
They're
this?
free to give any feedback they want,
Okay, so you guys can just email me directly then.
and they can email also us included. That's
True.
not a
Okay,
problem.
good. Yeah.
And so the only thing I would say is that I do not agree with number 10 that Kai's Road is off the table. I think Kai's Road should be on the table.
Yeah, that's fair. I think in particular in the the new thinking about can we really fit the
Yeah.
main, like now I'm thinking about can we really fit the police state, like, Police Brian. I'm now thinking, is it possible to get a police HQ on the same site as the fire HQ? And I'm not sure that's possible. And I know that we had initially, said it might be possible to put that on Kai's Road, right? So I agree with that, Mark. And so let's take that
It takes
out.
that off,
Yeah.
and in the end, it will be a part of the selection process for the select board to say what is the use of that land if or when Public Works moves out. Is it available for public safety or is it housing?
Yeah, and I would say it's like Kai's Road is 9 acres, and I did a quick measure on the Lexington Fire Station, and the footprint's an acre. So not taking into account parking, it might be possible to have a fire station on that site without dramatically affecting its value as a redevelopment site.
We have Brian Whitney with a hand up.
Yeah, I just want to throw to the committee's awareness too, is that, this is probably way too early because we're in the very early stages of this, but the dispatch center, the ECC, we're in evaluating and potentially, or we'll be in some discussions with some communities to look into hosting dispatching for other towns and potentially regionalizing some fashion. The reason I tell you that is if that does happen, that opens up grants from 911. And there's the potential that that could include a standalone building, and Stephen would be able to speak, far better on the details of it. But whether it's the same, footprint but a separate building or what have you, there's the potential there that if this happens during the evaluation phase of all this, and we do end up going regional, that a new building for the ECC, 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, could fall under 100% paid for by the 911 grant. So I just want the committee to know that it's very premature to say it's an option now because the discussions are literally just starting. But looking at the timeline of police and fire, new buildings and renovations, I feel like we'll have a good idea if those pan out, if we do end up hosting and or regionalizing and then opening up the door for those 911 grants. I don't know how you think it'd be appropriate to footnote it, to mention it, to include ECC as a third department with a potential separate building, if it pans out. So I want to make sure, and that's literally just starting this month, which is why I'm just bringing it up to you now that it's become a reality of opening those discussions with a couple neighboring communities. So it's just something I thought the subcommittee should know as a possibility going forward.
Yeah, it was great to have Steve with us, by the way, today because he was super helpful. Quick question: could that possibly go to a new municipal consolidation scenario? Is it feasible to think about dispatch, fitting into a new municipal office in some way, shape, or form? Or is that crazy? Like, I don't know. I don't know what the security needs are for dispatch center.
No, I think it could. Stephen is still on the meeting with us, but his computer is not allowing him to talk. So he just chatted me, which I can either relay for him or I can put him on my speakerphone in a minute if you want. He said, yes, that is feasible. That is
Stephen Johnson or
Stephen Johnson.
And I can do that.
But he did say that is feasible for dispatch.
Yeah, because that could be an interesting solution there, right?
Right.
I think
There he is.
Yeah, hello, everybody. Just to briefly answer that question.
Oh, good. There he
It
is.
could, but it would come with other costs. The state would have to evaluate radio equipment, security, technology requirements, all those kinds of things. So while yes, there are standalone PSAPs, public safety answering points, and those that are also located within other municipal buildings, it does present other challenges as opposed to just office space.
Yeah. I think the background here is just because in the municipal consolidation side, there is one option where there is one building in discussion that has surplus square footage. So if you have suddenly more square footage in a building that you might be able to use. Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's a good worthy consideration for sure.
Yeah.
I think what everyone is seeing is by looking at these two site visits, you're seeing how it's incorporated into either a police station or a fire station. And I think that's going to come back down to, my opinion at least, when they do an analysis on what this is going to look like and what's needed, that will factor in to whether it should be, say, a standalone or incorporated into one of the, one of the builds or the public safety complex, whatever comes out of it.
Okay, I think we made major progress here. Judith, thank you for putting this together.
All right.
This is a big step, and I think a lot of things are getting much more clarity now. So I think we have some homework. So Mark, you sent me some stuff. I do another run and then shoot this over to Judith. And then again, Brian Whitney and Brian Goldman, you both, it's just provide any input you want to give to this. And let's get this close to the finish line here, or over the finish line. This is good. Just for everyone, the overall land use working group meets on February. What is it? February 6th again.
Yeah.
And so far, the Public Works subgroup is scheduled to present their findings. We're a bit kind of a potential backup in case Public Works subgroup cannot make it. So Judith will try to get this in a presentable form for the overall group. That's the timeline we are working against.
Yeah, and I think that the idea is that we would be presenting a broader range of our work as well. So we would have to, go through the, a slide on needs assessment, maybe show some photos, so
Yeah.
set up
It's
some of the
I would
background
not
work,
do it too
but not too
broad
much. I agree.
because
Yeah,
I think these slides we have right now
are the big ones.
are the bone of this. Yeah, this is the backbone of it, and you can have one or two slides in the beginning to say this is what we had tasked for. We went on site visits, we saw things, and here's how. And then we go right in. I don't want they spend too much time really on other things. I think everyone knows what we needed to do.
Yeah, I wonder too if we need to, Sven, we'll have to think about whether or not we want to pre-release things to the land use working group members, because it's going to be very hard for them to absorb what they're seeing. And then, they're going to want to go back to see something in a previous slide and so forth. So we might have to think about releasing some materials or decks
Yeah.
before each of the subgroup presentations.
Yeah.
To
Yep.
make a better conversation, right?
Yeah.
All right. Let's be done. It's Friday. I want to go play golf. I
All
wish I
right.
was somewhere.
Where are you playing golf?
I was joking. I was like, I was supposed to go down to my brother's place in Florida and play there. He belongs to a nightclub there. And I was like, I'm
Yes,
not there this weekend.
this glowing green golf balls to find them in the snow.
Oh, and so when Chief Whitney puts a golf simulator in the new fire station, we can go play there.
We all get a
inside,
key.
yeah. We'll have one of the bays we can convert into the golf simulator.
Very
Perfect.
nice.
Okay. All right. It's 3:35 p.m. and the meeting is adjourned.